Maintaining a healthy work-life balance is important, especially for patients living with a chronic disease. Patricia Pagnotta, a nurse practitioner, discusses strategies she has found to be effective in managing a healthy balance in her life and explains how these strategies can improve the lives of people living with MS.
Hi, I'm Tricia Pagnotta. I'm a nurse practitioner and I work in the MS Center of Greater Orlando, which is a division of Neurology Associates in Maitland, Florida. I've been there for 13 years, and I have the pleasure of taking care of many multiple sclerosis patients. For me, as a nurse practitioner, I find MS to be one of the most challenging areas and most fulfilling areas that I've ever been in, and so that's why I have gravitated to that and been doing that almost solely for the last 13 years. As a nurse practitioner, we give holistic care, and I have always wanted to be able to care for others. And in doing that, as an overachiever in work, I've had problems with work-life balance. And so my journey today in doing this, because persons, if they know me that are watching this, they'd be laughing. They'd be saying, oh my goodness, you're talking on work-life balance. Because persons who know me either as a family member, a friend, a nurse practitioner, they'd say, wow, she works an awful lot. Why is she talking on work-life balance? So I have had some challenges as I've moved through, but I've created balance in my life, and I hope I'm able to challenge you and help you find a good reason to create work-life balance for you. So as Jana Kingsford said, balance is not found, balance is created. So you cannot find balance. You have to create it. You have to look at the dimensions of your life. The dimensions of your life include your work, your health, your relationships, spiritual and interest. Those are the things that make a person whole, that keep us so-called balanced. So finding a slot between all of those sometimes is very hard. Sometimes you have to mix them all. But the other thing in creating balance, the very first thing is accepting no one is perfect. I'm not perfect. I don't know any perfect persons. There's just not perfection. So we have to accept grace. Grace gives us the ability to say, okay, there are things that are good about me. What are the things that are good about me? What can I capitalize on? I may have a busy work life. I may now have a 24-hour chart that I can work all night, all day. And maybe you have a disease that doesn't go away and talks to you every single day, every single minute. But what are the good things about you? What can you do? Be aware of where you are and the choices that you make. Small choices in the right place can create momentum. Momentum can create empowerment. Empowerment will keep you focused on moving forward and the progress you're making at work-life balance. So work-life is not created by measuring daily. You cannot measure things daily. But the other thing is you can't put things off. Persons often say, oh, when my children get older, when I get out of school, when I change my jobs, when I retire. Well, guess what? Now is the time you need to make changes. You need to look at the little things that you do from a day-to-day basis to make changes to make your life complete. I remember when I was younger, before I got married, I had a horse named Ricky, always beautiful, gorgeous. I loved him. I spent so much time with him. Then I met my future-to-be husband, and so he came out to the stables with me. He brought me a lunch one day, and we sat on, after he watched me ride, we sat on a picnic bench, and we had lunch, and we laughed, and we played. Well, courting moved on to marriage, and we got married. I, at the same time, got a wonderful promotion. It was going to be my very first big management job. And so here I am, a horse that I had devoted all of my time to. Now I have a husband and a new job. So I had to make some changes. I decided to sell Ricky because it wasn't fair to keep him, and it wasn't fair to my husband to say, well, and I knew I wasn't going to give up work. So I sold Ricky. Well, and lo and behold, guess what? I'm married less than 6 months, and I find out I'm pregnant with twins. Well, that was a challenge. So decades move on. I did all the things that needed to do, change in life to make things work for my children, for my husband, for my job. And I'm happy to say that I have now found that interest that I had when I was younger. I've moved out to a farm. I have created a property that is beautiful. I have horses. Yes, horses, 11 of them. And so now with my property being so wonderful, I can enjoy my horses whenever I want, thanks to lights. But anyhow, things don't have to be that complicated. You're probably thinking, oh my gosh, a farm, horses, that sounds like a ton of money. Well, guess what? To have a farm and horses, I drive a little way to go to work. It takes me maybe, on a bad day, maybe 45 minutes to get to work. So I use that time driving to work. In the morning, I listen to devotionals. I center myself. I get myself ready for a busy day, and that's helpful to me. On my way home, it depends. Sometimes I'll catch up with the news. Most of the time I catch up with family. Most of my family lives in Baltimore. So I'll be talking to family the whole way home, and you know what? The drive on the way home is worse than the drive in the morning because of traffic. But when I have my family with me, I'm able to have quality time. And thanks to Bluetooth, you don't have to hold the phone up to you anymore. It's wonderful. So I have made changes that have been helpful to me, and I encourage persons to think about this. What little small things can you do to make change in your life? Little things make a big difference. All the time I have patients coming in asking me, what can I do? I heard about this. I heard about that. Persons sometimes come in and tell me things that I have to go look up because they've heard about things that I haven't heard about. But the reality is, some people just want a medicine. Some people say, just give me something and make this go away. But the majority of persons recognize, just as I do, that this disease, life, is not cured by a medicine. You need a very holistic approach, and the best way to do that is to have balance in your life. So when I talk to persons about creating a balance, it is looking at how they're managing their health, their work, their relationships, spiritual interest, and blending all of that. When one day I had this patient come in not too long ago, and she was telling me how much better she felt. And so I asked her, I said, what kind of changes did you make? And she said to me, well, you remember when we were talking about exercise and you told me about the exercises I could do at my sink in the morning? I said, oh yeah, I remember that. And she told me that she started implementing some of those exercises. She said, and then I started stretching, my legs felt stronger, and I recognized, like you said, exercise for me is going to be maybe a little different than for somebody else, but I started doing it. She said that she was walking 15 to 20 minutes every single day, and that had made a huge difference. It made a huge difference in the fact that she was taking ownership for her health. She was working on a dimension of her health. It was empowering her, building her spirit to be so much better. And she said that she had gotten to the point that walking was becoming much easier for her because she was doing it more regularly, that she was then able to also listen to motivational speakers or music or her iPad, whatever she had, while she was walking, whereas before she told me that walking and doing anything else was impossible. But again, she motivated herself and did something different. As I go around the country talking to persons and even persons in my own practice, one of the things that I find help persons the most, the advances in technology, the medicines we have, they're great. They're fantastic. And we have much more hope than we've had in the past. But really, it's creating a resilience. Persons create resilience by having a full, balanced life. One day in the infusion center in our office, I had a patient who was crocheting, beautiful crocheting, and the person that came in next looked at her crocheting and admired her, told her how wonderful it was. You could just see the smile on her face. Somebody was admiring something that she was doing. She was doing something while literally somebody else was doing something to her. So she was combining two different things. But somebody was also admiring her. Before I knew it, I came back in again, and here she had pulled out an extra hook and some yarn, and she was teaching the girl how to crochet. So by the end of the infusion, one had learned something and the other had passed something on. And I can tell you to this day, I have seen finished projects from both of those individuals. So I have a person who's, again, shared something, made herself feel so much better, someone who has created a new hobby. And beyond that, they both developed a friendship. And so again, interest, spirit, balance, blending what you do. The other thing that I think is important to think about with balance is that stress. We know that stress is necessary in life. If it weren't for stress, I don't think anyone would get out of bed. So a certain amount of stress is good for individuals, but too much stress can actually be harmful. We know that this is harmful not only to persons who have multiple sclerosis, but persons in general population. So in a recent survey done of persons in the United States, about a third to half described having extreme stress in their life and in their workplace. And that contributed to mental health holidays, which take away from production. So when we look at stress, stress is a economic problem for businesses, but it's a problem for persons individually. The thing about stress I like to tell persons who have multiple sclerosis is you have to think a little bit differently about stress, because stress, we know, has been linked to exacerbations. So stress causes your immune system to get more aggravated. And we know that, again, some stress is good, but too much stress is not. I remember after treating a patient for a relapse, very bright gentleman, he was telling me about some of the events that happened right before his relapse. He's a guy who had a very, very promising career, high power at a theme park, and he was on the process of building his biggest project ever. So this was occurring in December. This big project he had due December. The parks in Orlando in December are absolutely wild. So it was busy, crazy, had this big project. It's December. He had a young family, kids, a lot of activities he had to participate in. And then on top of that, he was doing a modeling job. And this was something, I say job, but it's probably really a hobby for him. But he got offered some very high-powered commercials, and he could not turn that down. So in doing all of those activities, he reflected that he didn't let any of that go. He tried to do everything, and lo and behold, he had a terrible relapse. And the only thing he wound up doing for over a month was participating in rehabilitation. So I caution persons, again, balance with multiple sclerosis is extremely important to minimize your stress. So balance equals strength. Strength builds resistance, satisfied life, and a happy life. It's going to make you healthy. So I challenge persons to take control. Think about what you're doing and why are you doing it. Is there a way that you can combine some activities with other activities. Are you doing what makes you you? Don't lose you. Take control. Remember grace. No one is perfect. We all have faults. We all have strengths. Build on the things that you're strong in. I guarantee you have a strength. If you can't find it, please talk to someone. In my practice, I make consultations all the time to help persons with balance. So I encourage you to talk to your healthcare provider. When I'm talking to persons about balance, I make consultations to physical therapists. They help with strength. I make consultations to occupational therapists. I don't know persons that are better at helping people organize and get themselves together. And sometimes it's a counselor I make consultations to. So as a team, you working with your family, your loved ones, your healthcare provider, and focusing on you, you can create balance. You can take control. You can build resilience.